Hi, welcome to Chapter 5, Philosophy of Physical Activity. I'm Professor Clemens. Philosophical thinking in physical activity. Reflection is the key. Various types of reflection are used. Decisions are based on good judgment and logic. Valid and reliable results are expected even without controlled experiments, as in the physical sciences. The power of reflection allows for a broader range of phenomena to be studied as compared to areas limited to testing, measuring, or examining physical objects. Forces us to examine our own beliefs in greater depth and to develop well-reasoned arguments for them, and helps us become more open-minded. We entertain, examine, and possibly accept ideas, theories, and positions we may previously have ignored or discarded without good reason. Reflection, here are the tools: logic, speculation, imagination, and thinking. Philosophic methods typically do not include the gathering of data from controlled experiments, but the results can be still valid and reliable. Philosophic claims about values in physical activity: personal opinion, then speculation, then probable assertion, then truth assertion. The goals of philosophy of physical activity and kinesiology are: 1. To understand the nature and value of health and physical activity, particularly in the form of exercise, sport, games, play, and dance. To understand how confident we can be about our claims in kinesiology, and to learn how we ought to behave in sport in our professional lives as kinesiologists. The history of philosophy of physical activity began in the 1960s. The early scholars were Metheny and Schlecher. Organizations and the subdisciplines came in the 1970s. Formation of the PSSS, Philosophic Society for the Study of Sport, which is now the International Association for the Philosophy of Sport, IAPS. Expanding the subdiscipline 2000 to present, renewed interest in the subdiscipline, particularly with focus on interdisciplinary research, and groups worldwide are increasing involvement, no longer limited to North America. Research methods. Inductive reasoning begins with specific causes to develop broad general principles. That's inductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning begins with broad, factual, or hypothetical premises in order to determine more specific conclusions that follow from them. And descriptive reasoning begins with one example of some phenomenon, and then it varies to see how dramatically it changes. Change, or its absence, allows a more accurate description of the central characteristics of the item being examined. So you have inductive reasoning, deductive reasoning, and descriptive reasoning. The overview of knowledge in the philosophy of physical activity is the nature of the person, specifically the mind-body relationship, the nature of the sport and competition and its relationships to work and play, and the values promoted by physical activity, ethical values, and sport. The person problem, the ways to understand the mind and body, are through materialism. The human being is nothing more than a complex machine. Subjective experiences are real but have no power. Then there's dualism. The mind and body are separate. Our thoughts count. Priority is given to the mind. Or holism. The mind and body are interdependent. All behavior is ambiguous. The mind and body work together. Significance of rules. Rules serve as formal types of game cues. What should be accomplished and how should we accomplish it? Rules create a problem that is artificial yet intelligible. Respecting the rules preserves sport. Rules liberate us and allow us to explore our capabilities in a protected environment. And rules can be changed when the challenge becomes too easy or too difficult. The significance of skills. The rule book of each sport indicates the set motor skills that the game is designed to test. Specific motor skills for each sport develop out of the relationship between the goal of the game and the means allowed, prohibited to pursue it, the rules. A set of motor skills provides each sport with an idiosyncratic characteristics that make it unique. Motor skills represent the standards of excellence by which players evaluate their performance. Significance of competition. Competition does the following: determines winners and losers, how well one person or team achieves the goals of the game, compares opponents by requiring two parties to commit to the same test to determine athletic superiority, Values excellent play. The process of competing in the game is valued as much as the outcomes that result from the play, and they can be organized both competitively and non-competitively. Games and sports. Games are artificial problems. Games are created by a set of rules that specify a goal to be achieved and limit the means that participants can use to reach the goal. Rules exist for the sole purpose of creating the game. They would be absurd in ordinary life. Sport is a game in which motor skills are required to reach a goal. Play and duty in sport. Sport is a goal-oriented activity in which we accept rules. Sports may be encountered as a chore or as play. They're duty-like or play-like. Duty-like sports. Sport participation is justified by the beneficial effects of the sport. Sport is viewed as something that we must do because of what it does for us. Examples of these effects include improving our health, teaching civic values, fostering national pride, and combating sedentary living and obesity. Sports participation is justified by its intrinsic values. Sports is associated with an autotelic attitude that is in contrast to all forms of instrumental or utilitarian orientations toward the world. Play is focused on what we are doing for its own sake and nothing more. Even if extrinsic rewards and goals were the initial impetus for participation, a shift toward the intrinsic value of participation produces a play-like focus. Two potent combinations. The combination of physical activity, sport, and play is a powerful incentive to get us moving. When the doing becomes intrinsically meaningful and sensuously enchanting, we are more likely to continue with the activity. And the artificiality of the sport seems to be especially attractive. We love to solve problems created for the sole purpose of discovering whether or not they can be solved. Physical activity and play plus competition can be even more powerful to get us moving. The uncertainty and tension of discovering our chances in the sport, combined with the ambiguity of drama of learning how we will fare in a comparison to our opponents, is very attractive. The play-like nature allows us to develop friendships with fellow sports people and aim for excellence, not just victories. Physical activity values. Values in physical activity sport: ethical, aesthetic, and socio-political. Values promoted by the field of physical activity include health-related physical fitness, knowledge about the human body, physical activity and health practices, and motor skill. Activity is related to pleasure or fun. Each of these values supports a different approach to participating in and developing physical activity programs, and these four values are not mutually exclusive. Ethics. Ask what is right and wrong, and what ought and ought not be done. It helps us to answer the question, how would we behave? Sport ethics, formulating defensible standards of behavior, impartial, consistent, and critical. Follows a universal moral point of view. No one counts more than anyone else, players, fans, coaches, and so on. And rule bending or intentional harm to an opponent is not justifiable. Basic behavior guidelines for sport. Follow the rules of the sport. The rules are the foundations of the artificial problem you find special. Cheating alters and destroys the sport and vitiates the legitimacy of results. Respect your opponent. Your opponent is a partner who shares your interests and passion. Strive to bring out the best performance in one another, recognizing and celebrate athletic excellence, your own as well as your opponents. Seek opponents who are close to you in ability. Care about your opponent's well-being as much as your own. Your opponent is integral to the contest, and a victory is fully meaningful when opponents are at their best. Remember that how you play says as much about you as an athlete as a scoreboard does. Reflecting on ethics. Consider your own sport participation. Have all your actions been moral and ethical? Think carefully about your own values and how you can make ethical decisions in sport before you begin your next competition. And be sure to consider what is good for the sport and the interests of everyone involved.